As I do every time, I will ask how many people have been to a panel before that I've moderated. And yet you still come back. Thank you. So you know the ground rules. The ground rules are the folks up here are here to educate you, enlighten you, inform you, not to pitch you. If they start pitching, I didn't bring the squirt gun this time, but there will be a virtual squirt gun. This is totally interactive. The idea is for you to leave here knowing what you came here today to find out. Now, the good thing about this conference, and I say this with a lot of love, there's a lot of panels that are overlapping with similar discussions. So you will hear threads here today that you may have heard yesterday. You will hear discussion points that are diametrically opposed with things that other people said. If you think anybody up here, including myself, is full of it, raise your hand and make your objection. Not yet, Dave. I haven't said anything yet. We want this to be as interactive as possible. If you have questions, we're not doing the normal wait till the end of... That's...
Phone them in.
Oh, good, it's not me. Usually my phone rings on every single panel. If you have a question, ask the question at the time. We're not going to hold questions till the end. With that said, I'm going to have everybody do a short introduction, not a pitch. Explain what you do, how you got to where you are, and what's consuming most of your mind share currently. And we'll start with the illustrious Dave Ulmer.
In 30 seconds or less. My name is Dave Ulmer. I handle marketing for Motorola for our digital media services, which encompass video and audio services that cross the boundaries of Motorola's business of mobile phones, which most people know, but also automotive and home solutions. How did I get to where I am? I've been involved in digital media for quite some time, since the early days and the early Napster and CD recording days up in Silicon Valley when it first emerged, and have been tracking digital music for quite some time, and its incursion into the home and into the minds of all the consumers out there. And I saw mobile is a profound change that's going to take place in the music industry, and I wanted to be part of it.
Srivats.
My name is Srivat Sampath. I'm the president and CEO of Mercora. We're a 100% user-programmed, user-contributed radio network. We have about 1 million people in 140 different countries. And essentially what we do with our software is you download it on your system and you become a radio station. It was an amazing experiment. How did I get here? My previous company was called McAfee. And for some reason, I thought digital music would be a wonderful place to be. I'm still waiting for the end of that story.
My name is John Rosso. I'm the Senior Vice President of Affiliate Relations for ABC Radio Networks, a traditional media person here trying to understand what can be done with the mountains of content that we produce every day, some of which we'd like to repurpose into the mobile space particularly. How did I get here? Worked in terrestrial radio all my life, got into the syndication business about 10 years ago, convinced that devices like the BlackBerry and all the cell phones you guys are carrying around are the future radio receivers of the world. I thought it important to be here at Digital Hollywood and at other conferences like this. That's really what's important to us, is finding ways to use the content we're currently producing and finding new things that we can produce for new distribution channels, specifically like digital and mobile.
Mr. Denbo.
I'm Drew Denbo with Real Networks. I've been working in the digital music space for a little over 6 years. Started out with a company called Tune2, an internet radio company in 2000, and Tune2 really built the backbone of the technology that is now Rhapsody. Tune2 was acquired by Listen.com in the winter of 2001. We launched the Rhapsody music service shortly thereafter, and then Listen was bought by Real in the summer of 2003. My focus at Real is really getting the Rhapsody music service, which was born on the PC, moving it off of the PC and getting it onto network-attached devices, like one of Ted's favorites, the Sonos Music system, and also onto portable devices like what you see coming out with from Samsung, SanDisk, and Creative.
Karen.
Karen Guilford. I run premium services product management for Yahoo Music. That includes our music software applications, Yahoo Music Unlimited, the Music Match products, our mobile strategy, and our foray into living room space. And the thing that I'm focused on right now is new platforms to distribute this technology. We're spending a lot of time looking at mobile, the living room space, kind of like what's next beyond the PC, and how we can still use the PC to enhance those experiences on different sort of form factors.
And what were you doing before this?
I've been at Yahoo Music, formerly launched, for 6 years.
Oh, wow.
Before that, I did business development for film studio Paramount Pictures.
And our other John.
John Loscalzo, Vice President, Multi-Platform Music Programming Initiatives for MTV. I like my title because it's really long. Basically, I work in the music and talent group at MTV and help get our different music franchises, whether it be Discover and Download, our music shows like Big Ten, Elite Eight, onto our different platforms, anywhere from wireless to our channels to Overdrive, all the different MTV digital and on-air properties. If that made any sense. What am I focused on?
Yes.
The difference between just because you can and just because you should.
Ooh,
Thank you.
that's a good jumping off point.
I'm here all week.
Ooh, I like that. Can you differentiate between just because you can and just because you should? Why don't you vamp on that for a minute?
Well, I'm a nerd, so I listen to Leo Laporte every week. And we're all focused on the Web 2.0 conversation and how the parallels between now and 7 or 8 years ago. So you've got all these companies that are really cool, starting to pop up again, but how do you monetize any of this stuff? And how they're going to make money?
Have you seen,
I like
I
playing with
mentioned
stuff.
this the other day, but have you seen Echo.com?
No, I
EQO.com? That's one that reroutes calls from your Skype call to your cell phone, but as a data call that could cost you $5. It's a really great technology.
Does it work with Ajax?
It's
Just checking.
it's amazing.
How about that Ruby on Rails? Or
I'm
whatever?
sorry?
Was that Ruby on Rails? Is that another one?
There's a bunch of those.
I just hang around developers and listen to what they say.
Okay, so jumping back to Dave here for a moment. We're here to talk about new business models and new revenue streams. I will let you do a short pitch. Explain to everybody, if they're not familiar, what iRadio is.
Sure. So iRadio is a new radio subscription service that we've developed at Motorola that's giving the control back in the hands of the consumer. Let them choose from hundreds of channels of digital radio, any kind of music and talk that you can imagine, and take it anywhere you go on that device that you happen to have with you, wherever you are, which is your mobile phone. And we've built an ecosystem, understanding that you don't listen to music and you don't watch TV right now on your mobile phone. You watch TV on your TV. You listen to music in your car. So we've built this ecosystem using the magic of Bluetooth so that you can sit in your car knows it's you, it talks to your phone invisibly, and it plays the songs that are coming out of your cell phone. And back to the question of because you can versus because you should. I'm in this business because I'm really passionate about it. And because you should, somebody has got to fix radio. I had this painful set of meetings last week with radio program directors who explained to me how they decide what to play on the radio. Do you think the consumer has anything to do with it? It is all ad sales driven on their surveys. I don't know if you're aware of this. I felt necessary to bring this up. The people who decide what ratings are people that are called at random and given pieces of paper to write down what they listen to on the radio. They have to remember each day what they listen to and write it down, and then mail this in each month. And I tried to figure out what kind of people do this. Well, people who have a lot of time on their hands and feel a desire to contribute to society, I guess. So your radio is being decided by some 300 lonely antisocial housewives somewhere in Nashville.
And we're going there in a couple of weeks. We can visit them.
Absolutely, we can go, if you can find them. And I just think that's got to change. And the people who decide what to listen to are you. I can listen to my tunes of the Middle Ages if I want to. I can listen to country music. I can listen to Angry Women radio, whatever I want, and not have to listen to what happens to be coming out of the radio.
And what's featured on Angry Women Radio?
Angry Women has got a whole selection. We've got some Avril Lavigne, some Alanis Morissette, some Blondie, a new one, Taylor Swift. It really helps keep me centered.
So, John, is terrestrial? I thought Pat Benatar used to be on that list. No?
Some of her songs.
Okay. John, does terrestrial radio have a clue what listeners want?
I think terrestrial radio has a very good clue as to what the listeners want. You know, Dave talked about the 300 antisocial, lonely housewives. Arbitron, the company that measures radio listening, is maybe a little bit more sophisticated than that, and there is some statistical basis for how they actually determine who listens to which radio stations. But you know, one of the real fundamental problems in radio is that it is one way. So we put these things up, and it goes out, and you know, we take to a certain extent on faith that people are actually, you know, listening to them. You don't know for sure if they are, and one of our challenges is how do we create that back channel? How do we create a much more direct connection to listeners? And that's part of what we need to do to fix the things that are broken with radio, is create a much more two-way, much more engaging experience with our listeners. There's no reason why, with today's technology, if you know you hear an advertisement on the radio and you want to know more about it, or if you just want to buy it, that you can't just push a button on your dashboard and it shows up by UPS in your house 2 weeks
But are
later.
we back to what Dave said about that it's ad-driven, not music-driven?
Right. Well, but beyond that, you know, what if it's a nice
trying
piece
to
of
be mean.
an EMI artist?
Oh, that's different.
And,
Okay,
and that's okay.
That you should buy.
Well, I think getting back to the point what people want, you know, having been in regular old-fashioned radio in New York at K-Rock and running focus groups and running
There's nothing
auditorium
old-fashioned
tests,
about K-Rock.
and K-Rock. I worked at K-Rock. LA is another story. But in K-Rock, New York, we get our research back every week, and Arbitron is, you know, as John said, you know, they have their methodology. Once you understand what their sense is, you can kind of program around that. But the fact is that going to MTV and then running, you know, we've got maybe 60, 65 internet stations, and being able to see exactly what people are listening to and what they're skipping and what they're gravitating to. It's the same thing.
And how
People
are you
like-
utilizing that information?
Well, it's just how
What
we tweak-
changes take place on a daily or weekly basis
We'll
based
tweak-
on that data?
We'll tweak the music in those stations to kind of avoid, you know, playing crap, you know, to not, you know, we want to play the hits because that's what people want to hear.
Right.
And that's the sad thing that's kind of gets lost in the new world, is that people like what they like, and they like things that are good. And so choice is not necessarily always, wide choice is not always great.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, I don't know how many people are familiar, and it's not a pitch, with one of the products that we have at Yahoo Music,
I get
which is
everybody a little bit-
Launchcast Radio, which I think accomplishes a great blend of that. What we do on an individual user basis is take ratings and, you know, implicit data that we have about play events, make associations with other artists, songs, albums, and also add some editorial voice through power rating, big hits or emerging artists that we think people need to know about, and then deliver like a customized radio station. So that's one of the things that we're really focusing on right now, is how do you bring that paradigm into the car with, you know, one button on a cell phone, or get just one click, and how does the information go away and then come back to the user in that kind of two-way, real-time fashion that we can accomplish on the PC very easily.
You know, with all the promise of interactivity, do people really want to interact I mean, what percentage of your audience do you feel really interacts versus they just want to be entertained?
I think we see a large percentage. I mean, you know, and we've kind of fine-tuned it over the years. I mean, the radio, we feel like we get a high level of interactivity through ratings and kind of customizing. One of the other products is music videos. People there kind of just want to have things fed to them. But I think what people want is relevance. I mean, they watch one music video, they want the next one to be something that we know is keyed somehow off of what they just watched. And I think the same paradigm is on the audio side.
Drew, what are you seeing?
Yeah, from a Rhapsody perspective, we see that about, you know, we have a Rhapsody radio product that's part of the Rhapsody.
You got Rhapsody in there 3 times in one sentence.
Rhapsody. Sorry.
You almost beat Brad Dewey at Meet 'em 2 years ago, where he mentioned Napster to go 30 times in one sentence. Go ahead.
I'm gonna try to eclipse that. So we have a radio service that about 5% of our
called?
overall subscribers are subscribed to, but about 30% of our overall usage is in radio, Rhapsody Radio. And so that means that obviously 70% of our usage is interactive, people actually moving off the radio product and choosing their own playlists, building their own playlists, and interacting directly with the service.
So you offer, and as does Yahoo, a lean in and lean back experience.
Exactly.
You have the choice. So you're not forced to interact all the time. You have a question? Yes, sir. Make it really mean.
When I go to the radio, I go there to also, I agree with Karen, I agree to get something I don't know. And I go to a place where I keep music, the things that I want. But in your case, where you think that you're pushing out what everyone kind of wants, I think that radio is where I heard it first. That's kind of my difference between my personal music and my radio. So sorry.
Right.
Okay.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
Come on up.
Sorry, I'm Jim. I just thought that I'm a radio. I still like to listen to new music, right? And I like that to come to me via my friends. But most of them, where do they hear it first? I think it's a radio station.
Yeah.
And that's somebody's job, a program manager, somebody who's not listening to that group who says, this is what you should be playing, I think.
You bring up a
Yeah.
good point, which
Sorry.
is there is a discovery function in music, which is typically done through radio, whether it's terrestrial, satellite, or even the internet radio. And there is something that happens after discovery, which is the song becomes a hit in your head, which is when you go, either you buy the CD or you get the digital download and you put it in your iPod, and they're very distinct functions. It takes about 7 to 8 listens before a song becomes a hit in your head. And it's a fascinating data point, and that's why, I keep telling the labels where the same economics that work on the internet work for radio. If you send out 1,000 emails, 2% of the people will click on it. If you put up 1,000 banners, 1.5% of the people will click on it. If you get 1,000 listens, 1.5% or 2% of the people will buy the CD. So digital music is not too different from anything else we see in the internet space. And that's the reason, radio as a discovery medium is very powerful. Now, there are multiple ways of programming radio. You can do it the way terrestrial radio stations do it, which is you do surveys and play back. Or you flip the model entirely on its head and you say, hell, I don't care. I'm going to have willing broadcasters and willing listeners and let them do what they want, which is what we do. We have 100,000 channels any minute of music from all over the world. And if I want to listen to Korean pop music, I'll find a Korean pop music station and listen to it, right? And that's where it's going. It's going to a model where it's user programmed, because no station is ever going to be able to, find that perfect mix of music just for you. And it's going to a model where it's lean forward, where you say, I'm in the mood for, Monday morning songs, okay? And the system just goes out and says, okay, here are all the Monday morning songs, right? So you bring up a good point.
I think one of the things that you brought up that's interesting is the discovery piece, and bringing up the things that you said were radio and your friends and how you find it. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I mean, at the end of the day, all the music's going to exist out there, and then it is, how do you find the thing you forgot about? How do you find the thing that's new? And so one thing, we haven't touched on is the community aspect and linking those people up. So, what if you found a station in the Mercora service that was programmed by somebody and you're like, I want more by this person. So being able to also forge a connection with someone else who made a relevant recommendation and getting more from that person.
Yes, how at Yahoo or at Rhapsody, how do you balance social recommendation versus using recommendation services such as Pandora or things like that?
Well, we have our own editorial staff that that builds those recommendations, and yeah, we have both a community area within the service where people can share playlists. You can actually soon you'll be able to subscribe to other subscribers generated playlists, So, you know, it's actually, I'd say it's more user-driven, what you're looking for. If you're looking for community-based recommendations, you can get those. If you're looking for our editorial-based recommendations, those are there for you as well. It's pretty much balanced, I would say, evenly.
John, what's Urge going to look like?
It's going to be fantastic, but you told me not to do any plugs.
Well, it's not a plug per se, but give us, I mean, okay, you've seen what everybody else here, you've obviously looked at what everyone else is doing. What are you going to do better? Where's the room for improvement? Everybody familiar with what Urge is? Anyone familiar with what Urge is? Okay, good. Why don't you tell them about what Urge is?
It's our music download store that will launch in Q2. It's currently in beta. It's very exciting.
Q2 this year?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just checking.
Yeah. Basically, radio right now, we're developing how we're going to do radio. And there will be opportunities for the user to create their own playlist and kind of modify each station, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll also use the MTV stations that are in Urge on .com as well, so they'll kind of go back and forth. As to the user experience, I haven't worked directly with that, so I don't want to misspeak for Michael Bloom and his team,
Okay.
taking the cop out.
So the gentleman from Coding Technologies, you have a question?
Yeah, maybe going back a little bit to the discovery question. So, you know, Arbitron is great, but it pushes out something that I am either interested or not interested in consuming. And the other approach is also a little bit worrisome because if you have, you know, willing providers of content and willing consumers of content, I don't know what I don't know. How do I find something new in this huge sea of content, right? So it becomes the same thing. You stick to a couple of channels that you know and the same reflex that, you know, there's never anything good to watch on TV. What happens with intelligent pattern recognition, somebody who tracks my listening patterns, and can actually, and by the way, community aspect of it is also great, but it's very labor intensive. I have to actually monitor the community and read the blog, but I don't have time for that, right? I want somebody to recommend stuff to me, just realize my listening patterns and say, hey, you will like this.
But how much new music do you want at a time? Do you want to be bombarded with 10 things you've never heard before, or do you want that mixed in with things that make you feel comfortable?
I just hope that people who are more intelligent than I am can answer that question. I don't know what I like.
Is there anyone up here
Well, I'd
that's
like to
more
actually respond.
intelligent?
I'd like to respond to that a little bit, though. You know, there are services like Pandora that can sort of characterize the sort of song that you like and give you a lot more like it, or services that monitor your thumbs upping or thumbs downing on songs and keep providing you more and more refined estimations as to what you're going to like. But what I think is really interesting is when something comes completely out of left field that has no relation to the song you were just listening to, or to what you normally, or what you would buy in a record store. Something that somebody says, hey, you know what, this is nothing like you'd ever really, we think you would buy, but listen to it, we think it's kind of interesting. In terrestrial radio, there's been this Jack FM format that's popped up in the last couple of years, which is, they say we play anything and they make it sound on the air like it's, very unplanned and unscripted, when in reality it's one of the most highly researched music formats in radio history. But it does throw a lot of things at you from left field, and it's found a huge audience in most of the markets in which it's been put on the air.
I don't know anywhere else that you would hear Prince followed by Asia.
There are certain things that
whether that should be allowed to happen
to
or
the
not.
uninitiated may sound like train wrecks, but there's an art and science behind it, and there's a reason why they put that Asia song after that Prince song, and they held an audience, across that segue. But my point is, if you subscribe to a service or to a methodology that just keeps giving you a more and more refined version of the same thing, you really don't give yourself the opportunity to have something come out of left field and some new experience hit you.
Yeah, that's the danger of customized radio. The danger really is if you customize it so much that you're only getting what you think you want, you're not getting what you need.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I've heard some test samples been going through this for years now of all these recommendation engines, and I think there's two basic types. You have the machine recommendations, which is some kind of algorithm that will really look to find the exact same patterns, not necessarily beat, not necessarily tempo or pitch or notes or range or but a combination of all of that. And you'll end up with a stream of songs that really do sound a whole lot like each other. And it almost is like a bad karaoke night after a while. The other side is humans, and I'm such a fan of having humans recommend. Just that's where you
Except
get
the 300
great
women in Nashville.
DJs. Well, the good DJs who
good ones,
actually
as long as you have
do
the right ones.
program a nice string of tunes. Or you've got musicologists at Rhapsody that will program the types of songs that you like, and recommendations, and that works great. But it's awfully damned expensive. I think it's going to end up some combination in between.
Question.
I don't know if that necessarily useful justice to what his point was. I think that if the technology, as the technology gets better, you'll be able to crank up that variable factor. And it's not looking at, if it's looking at your entire library, not just the song that you pick for it to play based off of,
Right.
see that you have Anglo music, and you also have that, and you also have, so it'll create a context from which to pull recommendations from that's a lot larger than 100 songs. And that'll be something that the technology company will be able to, if I want my X factor to be 10 or I want it to be 100, the user will be able to.
You'd be able to vary that.
You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be done technologically, and it could be done in a way by which it's based on machine logic as well as user contributed information that gets fed into this recommendation engine. But you also have to look at the flip side. How much time do you spend listening to radio? 35 minutes? Is your life going to end if the programming is bad? No. We're not going to sit there and go, boy, this machine doesn't work. I mean, the way we see people use is they come in, they'll search, they'll find a song, or they'll find a channel, and they'll listen to it for 40 minutes. Okay? And, do people complain that the songs, the way they were, put together just didn't make sense? If it didn't, they just switch a channel, go somewhere else. So, we might be trying to solve a problem that, I don't know whether it needs solving at this stage, as long as you give them reasonable tools. Could be. You'd be surprised. I mean, I'm in the business, right? And I'm in the business of tracking how many people listen to what every day. And believe me, I don't make or break their day based on the programming that I provide.
Dave, counterpoint? No counterpoint.
No, I think it's not all. It doesn't have to be rocket science. I compare it more to just wandering through the mall, looking, doing window shopping. I find something that I'm attracted to, and I go into that store. We all have the choice of moving to a different store if we happen to accidentally walk into Victoria's Secret.
So, Drew, first on the block, and Yahoo as not last on the block, but most recent on the block, in talking about new models, subscription has been talked about for years. Rhapsody was the first to launch. Is it working?
Yeah, I would say that it is working. We have a long way to go. Right now we have about 1.5 million music subscribers across all of our different music services. Rhapsody is the biggest of those. The piece that we're most excited about is the to-go service, and I think that when it first launched, I think we all launched those services a little bit too early. The technology wasn't quite there. The devices certainly weren't there. The user experience, and I throw this out there right now so that I don't get blasted by all of you in the audience for how bad the service was when it first came out. But
Or those of us on the panel.
and from all of you as well. But the first generation of the devices that people bought, you had to do a firmware upgrade, and there was a 5-second lag between tracks, and it was just kind of a brutal experience. I will say that now it's gotten a heck of a lot better. We've done a lot of work on making it better. It's one of the advantages of owning a lot of our technology and owning our application. We also work very closely with the device manufacturers. So if you go out and you try today, like the Samsung Z5 or the SanDisk E200, you will not be able to discern between a Rhapsody to Go track on that device or an MP3. It's a fantastic experience. Still some work to be done, but I think it can fundamentally change the way that people access and consume music. But now it's a matter of all of us getting out and educating people that this is something that can be done. You can ditch all your CDs and sign up for a monthly subscription service.
What's your churn rate?
I can't say what the churn rate is specifically, but it was higher.
I don't mean that to be mean. I mean, basically, people who haven't tried subscription say, why would I subscribe? Most of the people I know who have subscribed.
Position of the subscription services, but once you get over that, I mean, people instantly see it.
You talk about switching back and forth. One of the things that I always throw props to him, Ian Rogers, who works with you guys, created was an interoperable playlist format.
Yep.
So that you can share a playlist with Drew if Rhapsody also used the same structure. Are you getting any uptake from any of the other services in playing in that sandbox?
I mean, well, I let Ian sort of focuses on that. I don't
I mean,
know.
can we do a deal right here between you and Drew?
Yeah, we could talk after. this.
Interoperability.
I
We're
mean,
here, we always talk about interoperability. We can solve part of it right here, right
I mean,
now.
I think that would be huge. I mean, between kind of the services on this side of the fence, you know.
And I don't mean to
have
talk in shorthand, but the way that it works is I can create a playlist in Yahoo, and he's created an XML link.
XSPF
I can always never remember the XSPF.
format.
That basically the playlist that I generate in my Yahoo subscription, if other services use that same architecture, if I send it to Drew, it triggers the same tracks in Rhapsody that it would track in Yahoo. And you have a question. It's a standard. It's a free standard. Yahoo doesn't own the standard. This was a published XML solution.
Right, so what it does, so you can imagine it this way, it's not actually sending, like say you created a 10-song playlist, it's not sending those 10 files to your friend. What it is packaging up sort of like the metadata in a group the way that you set it up. And then if your friend, you know, is a Rhapsody subscriber and you're a subscriber to Yahoo Music Unlimited, you could say, hey, I just created the perfect playlist for our dinner party next weekend, check it out. Send it, they click on it, and then it plays the tracks from the actual files are coming from the Rhapsody service, but that set of the data and the order of the tracks is from your friend. Well, I mean, we all use common.
The
you know, there's
metadata
ways
is
to
standard.
already
It's
do
just
that.
an interoperable format, which
Right.
again makes these services a little more fluid. You could actually subscribe to two of them if you like features on both, and you wouldn't have to worry about redoing your playlist.
I think a good
You have a-
analogy for like the interoperability would be a lot of the interoperability with the instant messaging platforms right now. I mean, I'm on AIM, I created a 30-person list, my friends on Yahoo, pretty hard, big switching cost there, but we still want to be able to talk to each other, so.
Okay.
Can I switch out of, so I'm an Access subscriber now and I want to go on to Rhapsody, can I take all my playlists from there and put them on Rhapsody? Is that kind of
If
You
everybody
can-
adopts the standard, absolutely, and it's
Yeah.
an easy
You know.
standard to adopt, so it's something that you should write your congressman in the various places. I would say write to Cupertino, but they don't always answer. You had a question down here, I'm sorry. Denmark. It's not, no, no. Yeah.
We actually launched Real Music this morning in France, Italy, Spain, Germany, and the UK, and it's you'll recognize the Rhapsody interface.
Ding.
And
He's working
You
it.
just
He's
passed-
working it.
He's
You
good.
just passed Brad Dewey, and you're on your way to passing Chris Gorok. Go ahead.
So it's radio and downloads right now. We are still looking to get the subscription service out there as well. We've had our battles obviously with Apple, and they're the dominant player right now in the space. So they're choosing to adopt a closed service, closed architecture. Hopefully through telling the subscription message, we'll be able to make a dent in that. But it's definitely interesting what's happened in France and in Denmark over the last couple of weeks.
How many people here, show of hands, think 1 year from today iTunes will be interoperable with other services? Okay, that's what I
You know,
thought.
Ted, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What do you think Apple should just pull out of France? Just cause?
Well,
Bye. Let's go. taking our ball going home.
Yeah, I think they should pull out. I think, well, no, I think there's going to be, I mean, personal opinion, I think there's going to be a domino effect here because Denmark came in yesterday saying they support the French position. There'll be another, the question will be, do they pull out of Europe? And
But you know what? I mean, there's
should
a
we pull out of
fundamental-
Iraq? I don't know.
Yeah, but let me to answer your question
Can
at
you get
its
Rhapsody in
core,
Iraq?
right? You've got consumers on one side and you've got capitalism on the other. If I'm a company, if I'm running a public company, my job is to build shareholder value, and that's what Jobs is doing. The way he's doing it is he's got iPod, he's got an app, he's got a store, and he's saying, look, people are buying it, and the reason they're buying it is it's a complete cradle-to-grave experience that is very, very clean. Now, who cares? Capitalism rewards efficiency. Capitalism says, you know what? You do a good job, the market rewards you for it. When socialist countries like France and Belgium and Denmark and all these guys start to talk about, oh, we can't do this, you go, listen, that's the reason why half the companies in these countries.
Invent your own iPod then.
Exactly.
But let me ask a question.
got
Just
another-
as
wait.
an impartial moderator, let me just ask you a question, not as somebody from a record company who will get in trouble for asking this. If Microsoft exhibited the same behavior right now, would this be an issue? Or would this have been solved?
Let me answer the question. The only place where Microsoft was hit with anti-competitive fines is in Europe. And it's an extremely socialist behavior. Guys, I mean, if you want to live in the world of capitalism, you want to build value, you can't do this kind of crap.
So I got another question about that. How many people here think that in 2 years, the iPod will be the dominant portable music device?
It is.
Absolutely
It's a
not.
trick question.
There's no way. I know what we're doing. I know what Nokia is doing. Samsung, Ericsson are all working on. I was stunned by the statistic that came out that Nokia is now the largest camera manufacturer on the planet. We're number 2. And that we'll see who's number 1 and number 2 when it comes to an MP3 device or a portable music device. But in the same time that Apple has sold some 40 million iPods, there were over 1 billion mobile phones sold. And those are mobile phones that are inherently an audio device. They aren't made yet, or they weren't made yet, to play protected files, DRM wrap files, have enough storage, have good audio capabilities, but believe me, they're coming.
No, but there are devices that play protected files. There's Windows Media
Yeah,
smartphones
there are
that
now.
play-
I'm just saying, out of those billion that have been sold, it's a
Right.
very, very small sliver of.
One second. First, the gentleman back there, and then you. Yes, sir. As loud as you can, please. And where are you from? Say who you are and where you're from, so we can attack you later.
Mark Marshall, and I'm from Network Artist Management.
Where's Terry?
You were mentioning that you, Motorola, and Nokia make cameras. However, to be a little bit blunt, they're not that good cameras. My Nikon F5.
Absolutely. The camera market outside of the cell phone business, the camera market that's left over.
Really
is,
good Nokia camera. It's a Carl Zeiss lens.
There are a couple of them. But the camera market by itself, if you take away all the cell phones, is bigger than it's ever been. It made the market grow by having a lot of lousy cameras. And say lousy, they're a different purpose. You don't use a camera on a phone to take pictures of the kid's birthday party.
Photos weren't the point of my statement. The point of my statement is my concern with music and my current allegiance to using Apple products to listen to music is all about fidelity. Their system works for me in that I can listen to music at high quality whenever I want. So what I was sort of wanted to address to the panel is where does fidelity sit with you and what part of your mind share is devoted to that? For instance, your real player to go, am I going to have timeouts like I do on internet radio? And am I going to have good quality music when my phone still communicates with my car?
Absolutely. It's CD quality that's being played over Bluetooth into the car stereo. And what we're working on, it's not FM. It's much better experience than using an FM modulator with an iPod by leaps and bounds.
On your
and it's been extremely important That's what the consumers are telling us that they want. They want high-quality digital audio, and they're willing to pay for it.
On your iPod, you can do Apple lossless. There's Windows Media portable devices that'll handle Windows Media lossless. You can ramp up the quality level. There's a company that's been hanging out around here the last few days, Music Giants, that are doing Windows Media lossless files for audio files. So if you're listening to it in your living room, it sounds great. And
Does anybody feel that there's great market demand out there for higher quality audio? I mean, once you get to a certain point, as Dave said, CD quality in the car seems to be pretty much good enough. And
Yeah.
some people call CD, different levels of quality, CD quality. If you talk to the satellite radio guys, they'll tell you that's CD quality music too. But anybody who's got any background in audio engineering is going to know that it's nothing close to that, right? But
being broadcasted to, my phone is being broadcasted to, which is then giving me the music. But I expect higher quality.
out of a streaming experience, you mean, not a storage and playback experience.
No, streaming service is going to sound pretty lousy, especially over a cellular network where it's competing for other traffic. I mean, things called phone calls you usually do with these things. But using a cache and forward model where you can provide content onto the phone and then play it back in a delay, you can give you the high digital audio quality that you're looking for.
But it's not really a fair comparison to take what you're getting through an Apple iTunes download and what you'd get on a phone service. It's comparing apples and oranges.
But if you download a file, I mean, I've got a Windows smartphone and I have an iPod.
Right.
The audio quality is comparable on both of them. Now, if I try to listen to streaming audio on the smartphone, it's not going to sound anywhere near as good as a stored file.
Or it could be greater in some cases.
Yeah.
But without making a plug, if you want to listen to it in a car stereo, we can go out in front a little later with my car.
You had a question right here.
Did we answer your question? I don't know if we answered the guy's question.
I'm sorry?
Did we answer your question?
No, you're trying to sell more apples than oranges, right? And oranges are really good quality. What are you doing to change your apples?
One of the things you got to do is, at least for the mobile phones, when they go to, you can't do it on GPRS networks. You got to do it on 3G networks. And on 3G networks, you've got to use media format types that are tuned for really high compression at high fidelity. There's one such encoder called Ogg Vorbis. How many of you guys are familiar with that?
Yeah.
Okay. We use Ogg Vorbis. We use Ogg Vorbis because it's an open standard. But in 60 kilobits per second, I can pack 198 kilobits per second equivalent on MP3 and Windows Media, right?
Are you laughing because you agree or disagree? It's just a happy guy.
And what format
You
would
should
that
say where
be?
you're from.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you got Ogg Vorbis, AAC Plus. There's some good formats you could use, absolutely.
So one of the questions we're here to address as we delve into formats is you have a huge, huge audience of people who have spent the last 5-6 years on peer-to-peer networks, who have enjoyed and experienced more music than I think any generation before. They've had access to the library of the world at their fingertips. Is it possible to convert this audience, and Michael, you can jump in on this, is it possible, Michael Weiss is here from Morpheus, is it possible to convert this audience to an audience that will pay to get the music that they were getting for free? What is the future of either paid peer-to-peer or converting these people to your services?
I mean, I think you can convert them eventually in their music listening life cycle. So, for instance, at a certain point, people have more money than time. And earlier in their life, they may have more time than money. So, sitting on a peer-to-peer network, sifting through thousands of files, finding ones that don't have, bugs or are fakes or whatever, is a good value proposition because you can devote a couple hours. I mean, I think at a certain point, you just don't have the time to do that. You want it to work. I mean, do you want to go get the downloads, get the files, fill up an MP3 player, and go to the gym, and you might have 10 minutes to do that. And so I think that it is possible to do it. Are you going to get a college student who's a sophomore and has 6 hours to burn, sifting through all this stuff to all of a sudden fork over some cash for what they're getting for free? Probably not.
Yeah, I think we were talking earlier about all the editorial aspects of the services.
Rhapsody.
I think in Rhapsody, for example, and I think that's one of the key value adds that we bring over a peer-to-peer service where you don't get that editorial content, you know, and you don't get the editorial staff holding your hand, guiding you through. Out, if you like Aerosmith, you're going to like the Rolling Stones and so forth, and getting into music that you've never heard before. I don't think we're going to convert the very young demographic, but they were never one of the big spenders, you know, on CDs even from 18 to 24. Our core demographic is really 25 to 55, and those are the people that I think we are having success converting. Just like you said, they have more money than time. They value the guidance of, they don't have time to explore new music. They value the guidance of our editorial suggestions. So I think we are making headway in that area.
I think everybody's right, obviously, that if it's easier to get it legally than illegally, people are going to do it legally. And what we're going to do in Urge, let's see, I have to get it in because Rhapsody's been getting the plug, is that there will be editorial content supporting music, so it'll bring you through the experience. But also what MTV brings to the table is that we have relationships with artists like no other service out there, period. So we will bring artists into the mix to recommend their favorite songs to be part of our franchises, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want you to squirt me if I do any more plugs.
That's
but,
okay. Michael, is
that's what it
this
It's about the
doable?
brand and the experience.
Here's the question, though. I think it's one question. I don't think it's so much of are we going to be able to get users to pay, or are we going to be able to get copyright owners to get paid? I think there's really the problem.
Elaborate.
Copyright owners should get paid for their works. Artists need to get paid if they need to create. So there's lots of different models that can be experimented to get that to happen. One of them certainly is to have consumer pay, but there's other methods as well. I think we'll probably go into this in detail 12:50 tomorrow in Long A.
No,
I mean, I'm doing a third
Everybody's plugging something.
yeah, but here's the thing.
Suing Skype, SKYPE.
If the consumer's not going to pay for it, then who should pay for it?
Advertisers.
Well, it could be advertisers, it could be Coca-Cola.
Which
it
gets
could be
into
an
ad-supported
ISP, it
models.
could be,
Right.
Model, sure.
There's a lot of money left over on the table now that the labels are no longer allowed to pay payola.
But you can't get the licenses. That's tough.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Alan.
know, the kids are not going to pay. The people who grew up on peer-to-peer are actually buyers in training, as someone on this panel pointed out. And at some point, a certain percentage of them will convert to a buying audience, but not before they're 24.
Who's paying you now?
The advertisers. Listening has to be free. We totally, absolutely
What
believe
happened?
in
You
the-
had a subscription service that people were paying
No,
for.
we closed it down.
Closed it down.
We shut it down because, you know, the trickle of people who came into pay subscriptions, you know, was just not worth the effort. So we, you know, the big awakening for us was, look, I came from McAfee. We built the world's largest subscription service with 15 million subscribers in 4 years, right? Very easy. It's a cash, you know, generating machine. We come here, we tried this. We said we can
Yeah,
do
but that
the
was
same-
based on you're going to turn my computer off if I don't keep paying.
No, that was based on fear. I mean, there are three businesses you can build. You
It's
can
a
build
model.
you can build a great business on fear. You can build a great business on lust, and you can build a great business on greed. Everything else you
All
got to
three
struggle.
sound pretty
Get
good.
all three, that's great.
You got to struggle. Okay, music doesn't fall in any of those three categories, guys. So it's a hard
absolutely.
Lust.
Yeah.
Angry women,
Okay.
we come back to that.
one. Okay, all right. You guys know
You
more
haven't
about
watched
music.
Shakira's Hips Don't Lie video.
But
I
you know.
Ted, would you say that we're still in a period with all this stuff that nobody's right if everybody's wrong? Or
I
vice
think
versa?
we're absolutely in a period where every model is viable
Yes.
for a period
Yeah.
of time.
It's a
And they
business
change,
supermodel.
and they morph. And if you create a model that you can't evolve, then you're screwed.
You know, look, radio is a $20 billion industry, okay? And it's on a free model.
Which is
Guys,
interesting. So there's this sleeping giant called digital radio. And I'm sorry that Bob, I mean, I'm glad you're here, John, but I'm sorry that Bob Struble isn't here from Ubiquity to defend his position. But digital radio rolled out here almost 6-8 months ago. I don't know. I talked Paul Resnikoff out of his radio last week. And there's at least a dozen stations roaming around LA here.
Yep.
Nobody seems to even know they exist.
Well, no receivers really available.
I have
Very-
Paul's.
Very hard, yeah.
Yeah,
You had to
we,
steal
we
it
can
from
all
somebody.
join in on Paul's
Yeah,
receiver.
They're
and we'll
very
get the
hard
experience.
to come across, and unlike in satellite radio where you had two companies who immediately went out and made relationships with the auto manufacturers and subsidized the installation of receivers in cars. The broadcasters have not yet pulled together to do that. There is something called the Digital Radio Alliance, led by Clear Channel and Infinity, with the participation.
Two small companies.
Yeah, two small companies in the broadcasting business, with the participation of most of the other big broadcasters. And on our part at ABC, we've kind of 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Some of our markets have chosen to participate, some are not. And they're trying to drive the adoption not only of standards and how those channels will be laid out and what the formats will be that will be offered, and even how the band will be numbered. I mean, there still is not final agreement yet on whether KLOS's digital channel will be 95.5-A or -1, or whether we'll start at 108.1 and go on from there. That's not yet been agreed to. So we don't even know, if the radio you buy today is really going to work a year from now in terms of how you would tune in radio stations.
But the model essentially is based on advertiser support,
Yeah,
free to the
it's still
consumer
Well,
to
the
compete.
model right
with-
now is commercial free on the HD channels. The HD Alliance is basically agreed not to put commercials on any of the digital music channels. There will be talk programming on some of those channels that will have commercials in it, but not on the music channels. And these things will basically be supported by the main channels that are operated. They'll be given away
Is that
for
a
free.
business? That doesn't sound
No,
like
I
a
mean,
business.
You can't make it up in volume when you're giving it away for
Exactly.
free. But the
Right.
idea, I think, at least initially, is to try to drive distribution and to drive, to
But what
get an
happens on
audience.
that day when they start playing commercials? Is there consumer
you know,
They'll
flight?
be in
think
digital quality and they'll sound very good.
They'll be excellent commercials. I think that that people are trained to listen to commercials. I think if it goes over the top, and if you're asking somebody to sit through 3 or 4 or 7, or in the cases of John's old station K-Rock in New York, I would tune into Howard Stern and hear 23 minutes of commercials in a row. I mean,
We loved every minute of them.
people aren't going to listen to that. And if you're an advertiser and you think that your spot, which is airing 14th in that pod of 24, gets heard by anybody, you're deluding yourself. So I think that the audience will sit through commercials if it means they don't have to pay for the programming, but there's a limit to how much they will tolerate. I also think that as they get older, as these guys are saying, there's a point at which you have more money than time, and that applies to radio programming as well. And what we've seen in our business is it doesn't have to be all ad supported. There is actually a subscription model that works with some of our programs. An example would be business programs where people would rather give you $5, $6, or $10 a month to know that that program will be available for them whenever they want it and wherever they want it, rather than having to carve out 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon to listen to it.
But this is web-based.
Well, web-based
It
or
doesn't have
podcasting.
to be
Mobile.
mobile.
It doesn't have
Or
to be web.
podcast.
Once it's digitized, you can do anything
Just
you want.
deliver.
with it.
Okay.
It could be mobile.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely.
Well,
So-
that's the thing that, with Free FM in New York, they have a Penn Jillette podcast. They break up an hour show into 20-minute segments, which is a little maddening. But you know what? I wouldn't pay for that, but if they put a commercial at the beginning of it or at the end of it, I wouldn't be upset. And I listen to that show more as a podcast than I do over the air. So they could monetize that without even thinking about it. And believe me, they know how to sell commercials.
Other questions? Alan, you had a question? What is your name?
Probably best to both Johns. Based on what internet radio and iPods have shown the terrestrial radio industry and the loss of the audience to terrestrial radio, if you had an hour tomorrow to change what terrestrial radio does to be more profitable, what would you do?
Well,
And John, nobody's here. This is all between us.
Yeah.
No one's going to quote you.
I
Hands
mean,
down.
first, I would disagree with the premise that the audience to terrestrial radio is declining. It has declined, and as over the last couple of years, actually, there, on an average quarter-hour basis, is more listening to terrestrial radio than last year, and then the year before, and then the year before that. Satellite has gotten an awful lot of play in the press. It's got a lot of mind share, but there's still very, very little audience to satellite radio. I think internet radio is a far bigger threat to terrestrial radio than satellite will ever be. What can terrestrial radio do to remain relevant and to to remain top of mind in terms of, being the first place people go when they want to hear music or get information. I think relevance is the key, as Karen was saying. It's got to be relevant. I think radio needs to remain, as much as possible, a local business. When you turn on KROQ here in Los Angeles, it's great to hear the great music that they play for you, but you also want to know what's going on in Los Angeles. If that were being programmed from a studio, in Rockefeller Center like Sirius or in Washington like XM, and they're never really relating to you and to what's going on in your neighborhood, then it's not really much better than just having a CD, trunk full of CDs, in a changer, or having some kind of iPod or MP3 player just spitting out a playlist. So radio needs to remain relevant and local. Needs to continue to fulfill that role of being an influencer and guiding you to music if that's what you're into, or telling you what the news is, telling you what's important, telling you where the traffic jam is on the 405.
Channel 222.
Well, not only that, but what radio is really strong at, and what I think radio always gets shortchanged on, is the fact that local radio stations are probably some of the best branded businesses in all of media. Each station needs to stand for something. Each station has to have a very clear image, or else they fail. KROQ in LA is probably one of the best examples when it comes to a music station. They have a rich history, they have a great morning show, but they also, if you go to anybody who's a music fan, they know what KROQ is, and they know what K-Rock is.
But what's interesting is, to different people, K-Rock is different things in their mindset.
Right, so over time, and
they've done a good job of reaching a large audience, yet serving niches.
Right, so the next step is, and having worked on, my job before MTV was I worked for CBS TV, the TV group. We did a bunch of sites for the local TV channels, but we also did all the radio stations in New York. So one of the challenges there was to say, okay, Mr. Radio Station guy, how do you get into this space, be true to your brand on a local level? What do you do? And that's before podcasts were really popular. There are a lot of opportunities for local radio to really expand and really get vertically deep into new media without necessarily having to worry about some guy in Kansas listening to a station in New York. There are plenty of people in New York to build a business around, online.
Srivats, how do we monetize podcasting?
I've tried. I've looked at that model. Honestly, it's coming from the tech industry, we have this habit of hyping things way beyond what their capabilities are. And podcasting about 6 months ago was all over the map. And I downloaded about 7 podcasts. I said, okay, all right, it's some guy in Kansas and his wife that do a little piece together. Wonderful.
Talk dirty.
I've got an hour to spare to listen. Do I really want to listen to this? So it's like podcasts are like sending satellites into space. They never come back, and you don't know what they're doing. Okay. So anyone who comes and tells you, if anyone comes and tells you, I'm going to build a business.
Usually they report back.
Yeah. It's almost as one way as radio.
No, there's a half-life.
We've lost a few of them.
No, there's a half-life after which they don't send you signals back, right?
They're often doing something.
Yeah, and when people come to me and say there are 8 million downloads of a podcast, I go, how many people actually listen to the damn thing? And they say, we don't know.
There's a company that's getting into the business of measuring podcast listening called Podbridge.
But a disconnected listen is very hard to measure. I mean, that's the same problem I have with terrestrial radio and podcasts, which is people say they like it. There's a big difference between, I'll tell you the math that works on the internet. 50% of the people who click will download. 50% of the people who download will listen. And 50% of the people who listen will listen to the whole thing. So you're talking small numbers. Okay? I see that on my website every day. Okay? And anyone who's got an internet company will know the numbers that actually translate to what actually ends up truly happening at the other end is actually a small percentage. It's a sub 10% number. So of all the podcasts out there, if they say we did 8 million downloads, take 10% of that and say those were the actual listens.
But there's an element of letting reality get in the way there. See, with radio, or with our experience at MTV, when it comes to doing any promotion in the new media space, for example, when we did exclusive ringtones, it's about the promos I give them on air. It's not about somebody downloading a ringtone. It's about the exposure for the artist, exposure for the product. That's the primary. So with radio, it's about, hey, Ampco, do you want to sponsor the Bill Scoberle podcast. And they'll go, sure, we'll give you 35 spots in the week, and we'll put you in there, and we'll figure out a way to make this work, and we'll charge you a little extra to be part of the podcast page and on the audio. So that's what that, but yeah, Drew and what's her name, or whatever that was, good luck.
Drew
I'm sure
and
they're back
Denbo.
to working at the deli now.
I will admit that I paid for a podcast last week. I
Okay,
actually
one.
paid for 4 podcasts.
You went for Ricky Gervais, didn't you?
Yeah.
And
So,
it made you feel bad.
But I think that that's a good example of wanting more by something I'm already interested in, and kind of back to the relevance thing. I mean, I can't get that anywhere else. I'm already a fan. I like his show. I like other stuff he did. He gave it to us for free for a while. I got hooked, and then I wanted more, so I
This
paid
is Ricky's
for it.
show? This is
Yeah.
Ricky Gervais?
Yeah.
But the free show was better.
The free show was better.
Really? The
now
paid shows
that-
are horrible.
I 100% agree, but I still paid. So the concept, I tipped over, I opened up my wallet, and I paid for it. So yeah, I mean, that's content and programming and what they did. I mean, which they could pull the nose up on it, but at the end of the day, they got me to open my wallet and I paid for it.
So when Audible encodes something, what do they encode that at? Like, the lowest
bit rate?
possible? Yeah,
Very, very low.
One.
Yeah,
No.
22
Yeah, but a
kilobytes.
podcast really has to be looked at primarily, like you said, as a promotional vehicle. You can't track it, but then again, I put an ad in a magazine, or I throw an ad out, a commercial out on the radio or on TV, and you don't track it. In the same way, you don't have that direct feedback. I think we'll have technology that comes along, and there'll be different types of delivery of podcasts where you can track. But in the meantime, it's a way to extend your brand, get it out there to people you want to keep in touch with. I mean, how many CDs did AOL send out? And, what's the conversion rate there? I know I got at least a dozen. They make great coasters. But it's the same type of thing. You just expose.
Well, there's,
And you get some people converting to a paying product somewhere down the line.
Talking about new models, Karen, for a moment. This is going to be a weird one for this crowd, but Ollie and who are the 2 girls? You worked on it?
Me?
Karen, yeah.
Allie and AJ?
Oh, the
Al-
artist, yeah.
Tell a little bit about, breaking an artist a different way. And explain a little bit who they are, because this was an interesting story that Jay Frank told me. This is not a pitch, but it's an interesting case study.
Well, I mean, I think that what we can do on the internet that's harder with terrestrial radio is you get that direct feedback from users. So, I mean, we have a few different programs. I will admit that it's outside of my area, but, we look at the stuff that I do in premium services to complement that, where we can actually interact directly with users and have them vote and tell us what they think is going to be the best. And it's not like call in and vote. It's do it right there. It's here's a few songs by these artists. We're going to vote, and we can actually hit areas of the market that may have been untapped by traditional ways to market an artist. So we can kind of zoom in and say, well, look, this isn't being covered in this geographic area at all. We're going to try to move the dial there and kind of just be a more direct one-to-one marketer of an artist or content and use those tools to break.
So in that particular, give a little background on this particular artist if you can, if you know the details.
I have to admit that I don't know the exact details of
My
that.
understanding was they took with Allie and AJ,
Yeah.
these 2 girls that are on Disney Channel, and with no airplay, they've sold almost 500,000.
Yeah, I mean, I can give a couple.
Zero terrestrial radio play whatsoever.
Yeah, and we've seen similar things. We have a program called Who's Next, which does the same thing. It breaks emerging artists. And we had My Chemical Romance on there and another band called Hawthorne Heights, which also eventually went gold. And they both, similar things, started 4 bands, sort of battle of the bands concept, competing against each other. Got a ton of exposure on the Yahoo network, ton of exposure through that program, and eventually both of them also went gold. And I think, at least My Chemical Romance, I think everybody's heard of by now, is broken into the mainstream.
And then we have Arctic Monkeys. Other questions?
Well, actually, we just did a very exciting thing with Arctic Monkeys, Ted.
What?
Oh,
At
asked.
MTV
Oh,
at
sure.
MTV.
Let me talk about it. Actually, Arctic Monkeys, they didn't do anything with anybody else except for MTV and our platforms. We filmed an MTV U live concert with them last Saturday. We also did a live in-studio performance with them for Discover and Download Live, which will be featured cross-carrier on wireless in the next few weeks for MTV2. Very exciting. First time they've ever done it. Plus, they did a new song that no one's heard.